Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining our webinar this evening. The topic is which education degree is right for me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't joined us for a Flinders University webinar before, please just make sure that you selected call using computer so that you're able to hear us. And just remember that you don't need to have your microphone or camera turned on. Hopefully you can see the chat box feature there. So if you've got any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to pop that in the chat box. You can either make it public so that everyone can see and benefit from the answer, or you can just address it to us. We'll address questions during the presentation if it's relevant to everyone, or we'll get back to you at the end of the webinar. So my name is Kirsty and I am a prospective student advisor here at Flinders. So essentially it's my job to help you try and figure out whether Flinders University is right for you, what degrees you might be interested in, and also how you can actually gain entry into those degrees. I'm also joined by Abigail this evening, so thank you so much for joining us. What degree are you studying at the moment, Abigail?
So I'm in the Bachelor of Education Secondary School and Bachelor of Arts.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking your time. I'm sure you're very busy with your studies at the moment, so really appreciate you coming in. We're going to talk to you about a few things this evening. We have a lot of education programs available at Flinders. So we're going to start off, I'm going to pass over to Abigail and she's going to speak a little bit, I guess, about her motivation to study teaching initially and what her experience has been like a bit so far.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Kirsty. So I'm studying a Bachelor of Education Secondary combined with a Bachelor of Arts. So this is a double degree that I'll talk about a little bit later on. But up there you can see we've got a few questions that you might want to consider before you look into an education degree. So why do you want to be a teacher and what motivates you? So lots of school leavers will go into a course like this, and you'll also find some mature age students as well. But you just need to, I guess, understand why you're going into this, because it is a role that is impacting a lot of people. So do you want to inspire others, give back to teachers you potentially had in school? That's one of my big things, give back to students and help people the way that I was helped when I was at school. Provide opportunities and create a love of learning. So they're just some things for me. It might be different for everyone else, but it's important, you have this and it kind of drives and motivates you throughout your degree.
That's excellent. It's nice to hear the reasons that people go into teaching. I'm sure there's a number of different reasons that people want to come back, and it's also good that you can come in at any age as well.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, so secondary education, so I can teach from years 6 to 12, and the Bachelor of Arts component there allows me to focus on English, history and health, meaning that I'll major in English, which means I can teach it to year 12, and then health and history is up until year 10. However, I was just on a placement and I was teaching year 11 health, so that is a bit more flexible once you actually get into that school setting, but it just helps you decide what it is you're more passionate about, because if you're passionate about something, you can get that knowledge across a bit better and easier as well. So we've got a number of options and different things you can combine it with that I'm sure Kirsty will talk about later on. So mine is secondary education and Bachelor of Arts. So talking about, once again, what made me want to become a teacher and what inspires me. So it is that flexibility in the classroom. When you're there, you'll get given the curriculum, but it's your take on it and how you can get that knowledge, that content across to children or to students of different ages, and hopefully inspire them to do something as well. It might just be to get out there and get a job. It might be to study themselves, to travel. There's a number of different reasons, but that's some of my reasons. And, it might take you a little while to figure that out. But, yeah, there should definitely be a driving factor behind it all, I believe.
Excellent. Thank you. And so when you were saying before about your teaching areas, so I'm someone who did not study an education degree, so my knowledge is a little bit more limited, but it sounds like the areas that you're sort of specialising in your degree will help you with your registration. Do you think it's possible to pick up other teaching areas once you become a teacher as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So with teaching being a bit competitive, especially within South Australia, so I can go out there. English and history are quite competitive because lots of people are studying this, but there's not as many jobs.
Yeah.
So on my most recent placement, I spoke to someone that had done PE, which is also quite competitive, but she picked up maths and science in years 8, something that she could kind of teach herself, that she could then go and teach other students, and it allowed her to get that job, which in turn she built up, her profile within the school, and then she moved on to PE. So there's a bit of extra work you sometimes need to do if you really want to teach your own area, but otherwise TRT, so relief teaching, SSO work, there's heaps of other things that can come out of your education degree.
That's really good advice, and it's good to know about the extra things you can do on top of your degree to get a job that you're really passionate about, which is cool. So for people out there like myself who don't have much of an idea, what is teaching?
So throughout our degree, we look at lots of different topics at uni that basically help us to become teachers. So when you see a teacher, they don't just think of it all off the top of their head. They do have lots of strategies and theory behind it all. So the lesson content and curriculum that is set either by the state or it is a national curriculum. It's just our take on it. So if I'm looking at English, history and health, that's going to be a bit different to maths and science and PE perhaps, obviously in what they're learning, but also the way in which it's taught. So our main goal is obviously to help people learn and develop, and that's where we step in, and we have different strategies for different age groups and different types of people as well. So if we're in a rural school, it might be different to a metropolitan school. There's lots of different factors to consider. And then we look at behaviour management. So this is actually a topic I'm just looking at getting into right now at uni. So it's one of our core topics that help us manage student behaviour in the classroom to ensure that everyone is learning the best they can, and helping teachers out as well. And our main goal at the end of the day is preparing young people for life beyond school. So if that's getting a job to function effectively in society.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight. So I'm going to talk a little bit now, I guess, about some of the degrees that we do have at Flinders for people who are wanting to become a teacher. So I'm going to assume that most of our audience here are in Year 12 and you're coming on afterwards. So I'll sort of refer, I guess, to some of the ATAR pathways that we've got. But if you are looking at adult entry, you're welcome to get in touch with us after the webinar. And I'll provide contact details later on for more information about those other pathways. So there is a really extensive list of education courses at Flinders, and I think one of the easiest ways we can sort of look at that initially is that it's broken up into two main options. So we've got what's called an undergraduate or your first degree, double degree. So they're all sort of offered as a double degree. It's what Abigail's currently enrolled in, and it goes for 4 years. So you look at teaching topics and you also cover your specialisation topics, which are those topics that you'll then be teaching when you become a teacher. There is also a Master of Teaching option. A Master of Teaching is something that you can complete after an undergraduate degree, and it goes for 2 years. So a Master's is technically a higher level qualification because you need to have already completed an undergraduate degree. We have a few options available under both of these sort of structures, and it really allows you to personalise your degree depending on the year level that you would prefer to teach and the structure that you prefer. So one of the ways that we can first start breaking down our education programs is by looking at the age group that you're hoping to teach. So one of the options that we have at Flinders is early childhood teaching, and that starts at birth and it goes up to 8 years of age, so it's up to about year 5. So it focuses on early development and community services. You are qualified to teach in kindergartens as well as junior primary, so there can be a bit of an overlap there with our primary teaching degree. And you can either combine that with a Bachelor of Arts or Special Education. Moving on, we also have a Primary R-7 option, and that's aimed to teach primary school students, but all the way up to year 7, so you're a bit more specialised in that area. Now, it allows you to focus on a variety of learning areas for the primary years. So as Abigail was saying, with secondary teaching, you're a bit more specialised, but obviously as a primary teacher, you're teaching broader topics, so you have to be across a few different areas. You're able to combine these courses with an arts or special education degree or general science. Lastly, we've got secondary, which is what Abigail's doing, and that's aimed to teach secondary students, but also some middle school students as well. The focus is really on adolescent development, things like behaviour management as well, and there are two sort of specialisations that are available, or teaching areas. So we have that as a number of different combinations. You can either do with arts, science, health science, languages, or special education. Something just to think about when you're looking at these double degrees is just to keep in mind that a double degree is not necessarily twice the workload. It just means that you're studying for a longer period of time. So often undergraduate degrees do run for 3 to 4 years. So our double degrees in education aren't really adding too much time on overall. You're still, if you're a full-time student, doing 4 topics a semester. Abigail will talk a little bit more about how that structure works, but it's just something we like to mention because it is a common misconception that double degrees mean you're at uni for twice as much every week. So that's something to consider. A lot of people do really like, I guess, the structure of some of our double degrees because it does give you a lot of flexibility. And it allows you to do the teaching topics at the same time as you're doing the specialisation topics. Now, this is just a really good infographic for you to have a look at, and you can sort of gauge this depending on the ATAR that you think you're going to achieve, but it can also help you list your preferences in your SATAC application. So we've got some options, I guess, for what we might call high achievers, or people who get an ATAR of about 90 or above. Through our bachelor combined with master's programs. I'll speak about that more in a moment. That takes 5 years. So that can be a really good one to list as a higher preference if you're interested in teaching, but it looks like you're going to get a really competitive ATAR. If you achieve an ATAR of about 70 or above, you would be competitive and potentially even qualify for guaranteed entry into one of our double degrees, which is the 4-year teaching qualification. If you achieve an ATAR between 60 and 70, there are then 2 sort of pathway options depending on that structure that you prefer. So the structure that I spoke about earlier in terms of either going into a double degree or going into an undergraduate combined with a master's degree. And I'll talk more about those now. So as I mentioned, we do have some bachelor master combined courses. So if you receive an offer to this program, you have guaranteed entry into the masters as well, as long as you maintain a minimum grade point average of 5. And it is a fully integrated qualification. So essentially it enables you to graduate with a master's of teaching on top of a bachelor degree, but you are actually able to study education topics in all 5 years of the double degree together with the Bachelor of Arts topics in the first 3 years. So in this qualification, it's advanced because in your final year of the Masters, you do write a dissertation, and you do that alongside topics that you're able to choose from our postgraduate education options. So some of these options are sort of more advanced or leadership courses, so it might be within wellbeing and positive mental health. You might be looking at leadership and management, educational research, evaluation and assessment, or gifted education, for example. So you really get that higher level of learning, I guess, and development of skills through research and writing that dissertation. And you've then got the option to go on afterwards and even do another Masters of Education and building on some of the topics that you did in your final year. So that can be a really good option to extend your studies. As I mentioned earlier, I've already sort of spoken a little bit about what a double degree is. We'll go into more of the structure in a moment, but not working twice as hard during the week. You just graduate with 2 parchments. So these are available in a number of different areas. So on this page here, we've just got the combination that you can do the teaching degree with next to the specialisation. So this is a good way of looking at the courses once you're trying to figure out what education degree is right for you. So if you've decided that you want to do the bachelor double degree option, have a look at probably what combination you'd be interested in studying that with, and you can have a look at what years that complements as well. So you want the perfect match between the year levels that you want to teach and the combined degree that you're looking at. So With health science, languages and sciences, for example, that can only be studied with a secondary degree. General science can only be studied with primary, and then arts and special ed is available for all three options. So you really want to sort of marry up the perfect combination for you. If you're unsure what teaching specialisations you can access, please let us know what you've got in mind and we can let you know what the best option will be for you. This is, typically speaking, I think our most popular option because it does give you that flexibility and you're able to complete it in 4 years. So moving on to another option that sort of fits within that bachelor and master's combination. So if you are really interested in that 5-year higher qualification option, but you don't get the ATAR of about 90 or above, we do have the conditional entry pathway available to masters. So there is a distinction between this option in that you don't do the education topics in the first 3 years of the arts program. Essentially, on successful completion of a Bachelor of Arts to a grade point average minimum of 5 again, so you'd be looking at an average of between 65 and 75% on your assessments, you're eligible to progress directly to the Master of Teaching, whether it be in early childhood, primary or secondary, depending on the option that you've applied for. There is a written statement that's required before you progress onto the Masters as well. But it's a really good pathway if you do want to do that 5-year combination and you don't quite get the ATAR. So that's a good one to include lower in your preferences. If you've decided that the double degree option is best for you, we do have pathway courses that have been set up and are dedicated to helping you get into an education degree. So I like to explain this to students as sort of like being on your P plates. Essentially, you're doing the same topics, but you're under a different course name. So it actually allows you to still study the education topics, and then as long as you get that grade point average of 5 again and pass or higher in your education topics, you then have guaranteed entry into the second year of education, either in primary or secondary teaching, depending on the option that you've applied for. So as you can see on the screen there, these do have a lower selection rank or ATAR of about 60 each year, and it's guaranteed at 70. So again, this is a really good one to list as a backup on your SATAC preferences, so perhaps as a lower preference. And it's set up so that you get full credit. So this means it doesn't add any time onto your degree. So lastly, the other option that we've got is postgraduate Master of Teaching courses. So this is a really good option for those of you who already have an undergraduate degree, or perhaps you're pursuing something else that you're really passionate about, and then some years afterwards you're thinking that you might be interested in going into teaching as well, or you have a career change. So we have Master of Teaching options across the different year levels as well, as you can see on the screen there. And these incorporate all of the placement components and allow you to register as a teacher on completion of this course. So typically speaking, you just need to have an undergraduate degree to be eligible to apply for a master's. However, for the secondary program, your undergraduate degree must also include 2 teaching areas, and we can help provide advice and let you know what you would be eligible for. If your undergraduate degree doesn't allow you to apply directly for secondary masters for teaching, we can have a chat to you and provide you with some options that can help you do those additional topics to help you gain entry into that course. A good example here is one of our relatively new programs, the Bachelor of Sport, Health and Physical Activity, particularly our outdoor education specialisation. We have many students that go through that program and perhaps go out and work for a few years as an outdoor educator, and then decide that they want to actually work in school, so they go on and do their Masters of Teaching afterwards. It's also quite common for people with like a psychology degree, for example, so someone like myself could go on and do a Masters of Teaching if I wanted a career change. So I'm going to pass over to Abigail now to talk a little bit, I guess, about what the course actually looks like when you're studying it.
Yeah, excellent. So as Kirsty mentioned, just because it's a double degree doesn't mean it's any extra work, and we can see that from the timetable here. So this is an example of an education timetable. So you've got 4 topics a semester, which is a full-time load, and which is what I've been doing for the past 3 years. Typically, you'll have 2 education topics, so they're your core topics that you perhaps don't get so much say in, but they're needed to become a registered teacher. You then have a topic for your teaching major, so for me that's English, and then a topic for your teaching minor, so that will vary from semester for me, whether that's history or health. And then you'll have a placement topic as well. Normally that's a lecture series that we get all our documents ready, get everything ready for placement, and then we get sent off, and then that is a topic as well. So I've just come back from my 3rd year 5-week placement, so that's taken up a topic, meaning that I only have 3 topics this semester, which has cut the semester shorter as well, down to 10 weeks. So that's pretty cool. I'm quite happy about that as well. There are great opportunities to learn specific information about the education degrees and your chosen specialisations. So if we look on there, it's a bit tricky to see, but there is an English topic there that would be considered part of the Bachelor of Arts side. And then also you've got a health topic, which would also be in the arts side, but then the blue ones there that are the education, they're your core ones. So you've still got a lecture, a seminar, a few workshops, nothing too heavy.
Excellent. And so your placement, you have to do that like a full-time job?
Yes.
Monday to Friday?
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. And with your class contact, like with that timetable, how many days, I know this is just one example of the timetable, how many days are you on campus like at the moment?
So it's 2 as well. So depending on the semester, normally 2. I don't think I've ever had any more than 3 days, and even then they've been, if it's 3, they're very short days. I tend to cram it into 1 or 2, and then I can go and spend time working, doing my own thing, but no more than 2 days for me.
Seems like it's very flexible,
yes,
which is
absolutely,
nice.
Brilliant. Different to school.
Very different.
Yes, also talking about these placements, so 2nd year you'll have a 3-week observations. That's what I did last year. 3rd year that I've just come back from 5 weeks, and then next year I do 8 weeks, which is the big one. So that can be completed in a number of schools. You can put in requests if you want like a rural or country one. There's options for interstate. I just had a friend that was at the Malaysian, Australian International School. You can go overseas. And someone like myself, I just kind of let the uni pick it for me, and it was a bit of a lucky dip, which was cool as well. So this is a great experience, and definitely where you learn a lot. You put that theory that you learn at uni into practice, and I found this the most valuable thing in my degree so far.
Fantastic. Do you miss the classes that you had with the students?
Yes, definitely. It's hard being the student again when you come back to uni, but it's all worth it. So I've got to get through all of it first.
Excellent. Well done on getting through your 3rd year placement. It's very exciting. And so a little bit more on that professional experience as well. What exactly are you doing, like when you're on those placements? Are you still having to prepare lesson plans and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll have normally 1 or 2 mentor teachers, and they'll essentially let you take over their classroom for the 3, 5 or 8 weeks, and you'll often teach what they were going to teach, or they might just give you free rein and do whatever you like. So I was fortunate enough to be able to create my own units and my own lessons for the students, knowing that I had a mentor teacher to back me up if something went wrong in the classroom, or if I needed a bit of support afterwards in terms of making my lessons better for those students.
Excellent. And I guess that it's a really good way of confirming that it is the career path you're looking at.
Definitely, And even if it's not, it's still a valuable learning experience, and you might use that and transfer into another degree at uni, because that's easy enough. But for someone like myself, it's definitely confirmed that this is what I want to do, and that's what it's all about.
Excellent. This is probably a good opportunity as well to highlight that you're not locked into the degree that you choose. So in a moment I'm going to go through some of the entry requirements into our degrees, and I think it's just important to keep in mind that there is that flexibility if you decide you want to teach a different year level, or perhaps you hear about a different specialisation that you didn't know existed. My sister actually studied education at Flinders as well, and she changed from secondary teaching to primary teaching, but now she's actually teaching in a secondary setting. So there is quite a lot of flexibility there. I think that's quite a unique pathway that she took, but I do know of many students that have sort of chopped and changed after their placements, for example, once they've got a bit more insight, and you can often get quite a lot of credit for that as well, so it doesn't necessarily add much time onto your degree. Now, as for the actual entry requirements, a really good starting point to know is that there are no prerequisites or assumed knowledge for these degrees. So for those of you who are in year 12, you would all be eligible as long as you've got your pathway set up to gain entry to university. And if anyone is perhaps in year 11 or watching these webinars, you can simply just select the topics in year 12 that you think you'll do well in. So you don't need to choose any topics specifically to get into these degrees. So the selection rank that's competitive is listed in red on the screen now. So this means that the last student that we accepted into that course in the last intake in 2019 had that score. So if you achieve, for example, a 70 or above, you're actually competitive to get into nearly all of the education programs, except for special education in early childhood and primary teaching, which has got a slightly higher score. And if you achieve an 80 or above, you've actually got guaranteed entry into most of the options on the screen, meaning that we have to make you an offer if it's your first preference. The exemptions there are for primary with arts, which is 85, and secondary with health sciences, which is 90. So another thing that's definitely worth mentioning is the teaching capability statement. So this was introduced from August 2018 and it is a requirement for all teaching programs in South Australia. So if you've applied through SATAC already, you probably have already done this component, but something to keep in mind is that it is an unassessed piece in that it's not actually, you're not given a score that impacts your ability to come into teaching. It's a pass or fail item. So it's essentially to check that your intentions are correct for going into teaching. It's really important with this statement when you're answering the questions which are outlined on the screen now, for those of you who haven't seen those, it's really important that you do list actual examples. So we're not just looking for a statement, but we're looking for some actual examples that you can draw upon. So explain what you think teaching involves. Good examples here could be looking at, teachers that you perhaps had during your schooling. You need to outline the personal and academic qualities that you believe you possess that will enable you to become an effective teacher and provide examples of this. And also describing your attitude to learning and an example of something that you've learned yourself that was meaningful. So the capability statement questions will come up when you list an education degree on your SATAC application. It is an essential requirement, so you need to complete this component to be considered for the course. And if you've got any questions about that, you can get in touch with us. In terms of applying, if you have not applied already, you can apply through the South Australian Tertiary Admissions Centre or SATAC. So SATAC are a third-party institution that manage all of the applications for the South Australian and Northern Territory universities. The first closing date is on Monday the 30th of September. So this is an early closing date. After that date, there is an additional fee when you apply. So it's definitely worth just applying before the Monday at the end of September. You don't need to know the exact order of your preferences. So you can change these around all the way up until the 18th of December. But just make sure that you've got your preferences ordered as best you can by the 2nd of December, as this is what we call the equal consideration deadline. So some courses do close completely as of that date. You also need to make sure that your teaching capability statement is entered by Monday the 2nd of December as well, or you won't have that considered for the main offer round, meaning that we won't be able to assess you for any education courses. The offers will then be emailed on Friday the 20th of December, which is our early offer round. So if you don't hear anything on that date, don't be alarmed. There is a main offer round happening on Friday the 10th of January 2020. So you'll also be considered in that round. We normally recommend that you do contact us so that we can have a look at your preferences and help make sure that you've got all of your pathway degrees in place. And also keep in mind that you should receive adjustment factors if you're eligible for any of those, or they're formerly known as bonus points. So if you will be eligible for any adjustment factors, they will be added onto your ATAR as well. So you need to give us a call so that we can have a look at your preferences and let you know how competitive you'll be for your degree. Now, if you'd like to find out more, you can contact the prospective students team on 1300 354 633 and just select option 1 to speak with us. You can also email askflinders@flinders.edu.au and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you're interested in some other study areas, or perhaps you're interested in finding out some more general information about what to expect at university and how to apply and pathways and things like that, we do have a number of upcoming webinars coming over the next few months. So which psychology degree is right for me, and exercise science, as well as sport, health and physical activity are coming up in the next 2 weeks. You can see the full list of these online at flinders.edu.au/webinars. We'll get back to any questions at the end of the session now, but please get in touch with us, and all the best for the rest of your studies and your application for university.